Hello and happy Friday. Sorry, there's a little thing that you have to start, and it's a little bit weird. But hello and welcome, and glad you're here. I am tongue tied today. If you haven't figured that out, but thank you very much for coming in. Paul is here. Scott is here. Hello, Scott. Hey, Scott. Thank you very much for that text because Scott made a comment and last night, I think, and I am going to use that. I'm going to go with barnacles. I'll explain all of that a little bit later on, but I just wanted to mention that because Scott came in. So Scott is here. Hello, Scott. Paul is here. Hello, Paul. Thank you very much for coming in. And today's going to be pretty cool. I have a bunch of stuff. Let me go ahead and show you what I got coming up. We're going to be doing the D&D Temple Wethering today. And I had a wonderful time with this stuff this week. And in weathering it, I'm going to show you how I add dirt and rock and debris and some of the issues that came up with that. When I was doing this, I put on, this is sanded grout. And the sanded grout is what I use for my ground cover all the time. And I use it for dirt and grit and grime and stuff like that. But something with like some physical properties, not just paint. And so I put that on, and I had done this wonderful, at least I thought it was wonderful, paint job on the floor of this, and it just covered it. The grout has kind of a sandiness to it, maybe a dust, and it left that everywhere and just completely obliterated my paint job. So I'll talk about that. I'll show you how to prevent it, and how I fixed it. So yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The other thing is I have a live demo or a live video that I am going to preview in a little bit. I want to show you a little bit more stuff, but we're going to do a live video premiere today. I have a new video that is going up on Saturday, and I'm going to be previewing that. But let's talk about what this is all about. This is all about Barrett's Coffee House, our D&D diorama here. And the above ground is a 3-story building with a functional attic. And each of those levels comes apart. And that's the whole aim here. This is it right here. This is supposed to be able to be playing, or you can play a D&D diorama or a D&D campaign on it. And so everything is big, so you can get your hands in there and all that kind of stuff. But it allows you to go ahead and take everything apart, everything unstacks, and then you could play in it. Well, that's the above ground. The below ground, I've got two areas here. I've got a sewer system, and then below that is the ancient temple. And that's exactly what we're going to, look at and concentrate on. This is all from my favorite fantasy author, Raymond Feist. I started reading this in the 80s. And, the cool thing is because I read that back in the 80s when I was in my 20s, for goodness sakes, I've had that image, the imagery that I came up with. There's been no movie, there's cover illustrations, but that's it. So all of the imagery is built in my head. And that's really, really cool because I'm able to take that and build it the way I think it is in the story. A lot of times you read a book and you're like, they make a movie out of it, and then the movie is maybe a little different than what you saw. I mean, even The Hobbit. I love The Hobbit. I love Lord of the Rings, but it was a little different, than I imagined in my brain because it was Peter Jackson's vision. So when I'm doing a diorama that I've lived with inside my head since the 80s, man, it's really a fun thing. I'm not trying to copy somebody else's thing. I'm not trying to do a historical reference on something. I'm really trying to evoke the kind of imagery that I've been carrying around from these wonderful books that I've loved. And because last week was my birthday, Mrs. Modelcraft got me a new book, and this is the latest one from Raymond Feist. I'm just thrilled, and I've cracked it. That's it. Haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm very excited. So it's a world that I love. It's a world that I've retreated to, throughout my life, my adult life, by reading the books and remembering, fun passages or just great, storylines or chapters from the book that were really impactful. I'm just thrilled with the book, and I love it. And I got the new one, and I'm making the diorama. It's just all about Raymond Feist, so I love it. I got to say hi to some folks, and then we're going to get back to this because I do want to show you that preview of the video that is dropping tomorrow. But I want to say hi to some folks. So Scott is here, and thanks, and thank you very much. I'm so glad because that's a really cool idea, Scott. And what Scott said was he made reference to a tide line or a tide, and I hadn't considered that in what we're going to look at, the temple that I'm creating here, the cave temple. Now I'm thinking of it as a grotto where the tide comes in, and I can put barnacles, and I can put flotsam, and I can put things like are brought in by the ocean. So I'm very excited about it. And Homefront Forge is here. Thank you very much for coming in, Homefront Forge. I really, really appreciate it. Link is here. Hello, Link. I really, really appreciate you coming in. That's wonderful. If you haven't seen Link's page, please go look at Link's page. Link does cars. He does model cars and stuff. It's wonderful stuff. Link, if you wouldn't mind posting your link to your website, that's great. Please. I love it. Go For It Painting is here. Hey, Go For It Painting dropped a video this week. Am I correct? I believe you did. And so everybody, I want you to, if you're here, it's because you saw something that you liked of mine, or we've talked or something like that, or I saw something on yours, and I want you to take advantage of that. And I want you to get other people to see, because I love your things. So please put in your links and stuff like that. Links, reading this, the best way to use your imagination. Yeah. I love that because you're filling in the blanks. You're building that imagery. I love reading. And it's funny. I haven't read in a heck of a long time. Scott, birthday. Hope you had a terrific birthday, Bill. I should have sent a card. That's great. No, you were there. Thank you very much, Scott. Scott talks to me like every day. It's really awesome. Well, I mean, chat. And it's really great. So thanks very much. And the idea was really cool. So enough of me yammering. Let's go ahead and take a look. Now, this is a long form video. It's 30 minutes. We're not going to watch the whole thing. We're going to watch about 5 or 6 minutes of it, just the intro. And it's already uploaded on YouTube, but it's doing some check thing. So I don't know what's going on. It's also on Patreon. So my patrons, please, I'm sorry. I wanted it up there. I put it up last night, but it's like doing this really long check because it's just so long. So we're going to watch that real quick, and then I'll come back in and we'll see what it looks like when I'm done. Okay. Let me do this so it's a little easier for you to see. Good morning. Today, we're going to detail the Anzacs tunnel and common room. I also show you how to build this chair and my rope bundling jig. This was a great scene to design. I've got the Anzac common room on one side, and then as you come around the corner, you see the Anzacs actually physically digging the tunnel, and I'm trying to show the proper operations of how they dug tunnels back then. This is just one scene in a much larger diorama. This is my World War I trench diorama. It's even got a custom-made stand for it. The first detail that I built for this area was this turntable and the tracks. Side note, I did this early on in the project and spent a lot of time, lining these up and making sure this thing turned and did all that kind of stuff. And then later on in the diorama, I glued it down. It doesn't move anymore. It just didn't work to do that with the other things in the scene. So, it's just kind of learning, I guess. Building the little cart was pretty fun. I got these trucks online. They're N or O scale. I piled on a bunch of rust. I figured it would just get real grungy underneath there. And for the wood, I used a lot of washes and again, multiple coats, brown and even black, to get this really nice patina on it. Then I did the same thing to the tracks, and they were ready to go back in. I remounted the tracks in the tunnel. They're not going to stay this color. The tracks will be that color, but the ties will be like black with dirt and all that kind of stuff on them. Speaking of dirt, here's some dirt with some Sculpey made into sandbags, and then I painted them up and throw them in there. And then this is Tom Selleck, and he's loading them up on that cart. Okay, that was it. I hope that's okay. That was just a short kind of peek at what is coming on tomorrow. As I said, this is uploaded on Patreon, but there's something, it's just taken forever. And I don't know why that is. So my patrons can see it. Maybe it's done now. I haven't looked recently. And members, when if you're a member of YouTube, you can also see it as soon as it's done with these checks. I don't know what these checks are. So I did do a different configuration of it, and I may need to like upload it again. I hope not, but that's coming out tomorrow, and that's at 10 a.m. Tomorrow, that whole long form video, and it's 30 minutes, and that is on my World War I trench diorama. That's the one that I finished prior to this. And I'm going through and I'm showing you details, kind of like what we're going to do today. You know, there's different details that I like to add to the diorama. And when I'm adding those details, there's a lot more that goes into it. You know, I'm not just like, that looks like there's nothing in that corner, I'm going to put something there. Why is that detail in there? And that's a lot of the things that I go through, why I add the detail, why is the detail important, and also understanding a little bit about building a story in your scenery, in your diorama. So I hope you get a chance to look at it, and man, I hope it uploads. That'd be nice. So anyway, there you go. Thank you very much for being so patient. Now we're going to look at what I did this week, and then we're going to go and do some demos. I got some live demos for you. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, and that's where we started. So this is the you know, just with nothing on it. And then at the end of last week, I was kind of here. This had a little bit of paint on it, had a little bit of color. Now, what this is supposed to be is an underground cave that was made into like a temple, an ancient temple. And it goes underneath this, as we talked about before. And the story is that multiple different, like, religious or people, whatever, were going in there and making that their temple over eons. So I wanted to have some older stuff in there, some newer stuff in there. There's like an old, here's the base right here. I'm going to take this off so it's easier to see. Here in the base, this is basically an old altar. So before any of this stuff was ever built up for the mechanism that's in it today, people were coming to this, which was just a kind of a natural altar. So it's really supposed to be, you know, the end of your campaign, and it's the big boss fight area of the campaign. The other thing that's going to be in here is lighting and things like that. And that pit where that little altar is in front of, that pit will be like emanating a glow and things like that. So that's kind of what I'm going for in this little area, and it's kind of almost volcanic, but I didn't want it that way. I wanted it kind of like this has been sedimentary rock that, pardon me, has built up over time, and then because of other forces, people walking on it, and now because of Scott's awesome comment, it's going to be because of tidal movement. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The next thing I did was, you know, I built this. This is that mechanism I was talking about. That mechanism is supposed to move a coil. It's going to be like a magical, mystical thing. But I made this, got it all working and stuff like that. And then I put it in here. That's where the platforms came from. You can see the two top ones there, pink. Those platforms are meant to support the mechanism. And then I beat it up. So what I did here was I took the mechanism, literally just grabbed the thing and took it over to my wire wheel. So, I have like a benchtop wire wheel, and I took the wire wheel to this thing and carefully, but I wanted to show wear. I wanted to show age. I wanted to show just the forces of nature or whatever. And so that's what I was hoping to come up with. So as you look in here, when I'm on the wire wheel, if I take that wire wheel and go along the wood, I'll get these really deep grooves. You see those in there? It really did a number on the wood. Here on that pinion is almost destroyed on the outside, but I kind of like it because I do like it because it looks like wear. It looks like some natural degradation of whatever they had in there. Down here on the base of this post, it's beat up, it's scratched up. There you can see those high grooves in there. This one, you can really see the grooves in the wood. It just really did a number on this stuff. And that's what I wanted. When I weather, I don't want to just do it with paint or like add something to it. I want to show the physical changes that something's going to weather, like you're doing a tank or something like that. You want those like those mud guards or the flaps or the shirts in on the side or something like that. Those suckers ought to be beat up a little bit, I just think that adds a little bit more to it. The physical damage to it, I think, is a good thing. I just want to say hi to somebody because some folks came in and I haven't seen forever, and I want to say hello. So I hope you don't mind. John Hayes is here. Hello, John. It's been forever, sir. Thank you so much for coming in. It's great to see you again. Jacob, hello. Hi, Bill. Hope you're doing well, sir. Great work as always. Thank you very much, Jacob. Josh, John, I don't know why I said Joss. John is here. Hello, John. Thanks very much for coming in. And then John says, through history, temples of religious places, buildings, temples have been built upon others. So underneath is still what was built long ago. Exactly. And that's what I'm looking for. I like that thought. I like that thought that a certain group of people came in, occupied that, maybe for hundreds of years, and they found what they needed in there, and they came back again and again and again. And then those people moved on. They weren't able to maintain their society or whatever, but then other people came in. That's the kind of age that I want this to have. And that is integral in the story from Raymond Feist as well. It's really great because he goes into that kind of depth. He goes into and weaves some ancient history into the today that the people are, trying to work with in the book and the storyline. And I love that because I love historical stuff. They go into these places that are ancient. Excuse me. Wow, that was the wrong kind of, try to do that so I don't cough, and I just about went the wrong way. Whelans is here. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Good evening, everyone, and Whelans, thank you very much. I'm just choking on my tea here, so pardon me. Okay, so let's get back to the pictures real quick because we're pretty close to doing a demo here, but I do want to show you these pictures. Now this is when I put some sanded grout on this, and the sanded grout is what I standard. It's kind of like the go-to when I'm doing ground. It has a great consistency. It's quite fine. It's got sand in it, but the powdery aspect of it, which is like the cement and the stuff that it's going to make it bind together, that's quite fine. And what it does is it just clouded all of that beautiful green and blue paint that I did on the floor. And so that was like, oh man, and it kind of took away the high definition of those platforms. So in the story, what I've got here is I've got these 3 platforms, and they're necessary for the mechanism to operate because I don't like flat ground. I don't, it just doesn't happen very often unless you're like in a salt flat or something like that. So I always think about when I'm doing my dioramas, contouring the surface, having some terrain definition. And I found that to be very good because what it does is it makes you modify the things that you're putting in the diorama to adapt to that terrain, and it just looks more natural. So that's just maybe a side tip. I don't know, but that's what I do. When you're modifying something, so it's not like this thing has just got this total flat base. Yeah, that's a bad example, but the stuff that extends from it, if that built up area wasn't there, it wouldn't properly function. But that built up area becomes a cool detail by itself. And again, it's different stone, it's different kind of even architecture from what's already there. So a different people did it. That's the whole point. So let's get back to that real quick. So I needed to come back, and I also wanted to get some paint on those walls. You see the back walls, I had textured them, I had painted them the base color, but I hadn't really done anything with them. Here is where I started working on the walls. Now, because they're black, I struggled. I wasn't sure, frankly, how to paint them. I've always kind of done something where I do the black basing. I really like that because it adds shadows inherently as you bring color to it. But for this, I didn't know where I was going to go. When I started doing the white, when I started doing the colored stone, it kind of fell together. And I'm going to demonstrate parts of that today, but I'm going to wait till we get to the grit and the dirt and the rock and stuff like that. And then I'll start doing the demo. So I started coming to here. I'm trying to show depth. You'll notice that the stones it's not just all cracked through there because there are courses of stones to make that wall. That wall isn't just one layer of rock, at least in my thought. It would be multiple layers of rock. Well, you would have your fascia, the stone on front that you're looking at that's cracked, but that would be the stuff, the good stuff. But behind it, there's still stones. So if you look in there, I did carve other stones behind the crack. Again, trying to reach some sort of realism that may not exist. Now here you see I've got these cracks going. In some instances, they do coordinate with the floor because I need to be able to show that there's some energy, there's some force, there's something coming from that pit. That's the whole reason that people come to this place is because of that pit. So here is where I started adding the debris. This is rock, wood. That's about it because I already put it in the sand. But I'm going to show you, how we do this because I think it's this debris that's going to make it really light up and jump out at you. So that's what I want to show you. I am going to fire up the camera here so we can do a top down. And first, we're just going to look at the diorama as it is. And how about that? So here is that little field of debris. And it's like, well, it's just all one color. Well, that's very specifically done. Because what I do after this, well, let me show you first how I create this. What I start with is old cuttings from projects. So this is primarily balsa wood, and I don't want to use other wood in here because it might damage my my blender. Because what I do, and I'm going to go back to my other camera now. What I do is I take this little, I bought it specifically for this. It's a little blender. I want to say it was $15 or $14. That was before COVID, so it might be $45 now. But I got this little blender and I'll go ahead and put the cutoffs, again, only balsa because it's just so much softer and I don't want to destroy the blades in here. I put that in here and I just do a few pulses. I don't want to bust it up too much. If it looks like a board, I want to come out looking like a board. but it's been beat up a little bit, and so that's where this comes from. So I put that stuff in there, and when it comes time to use it down here, I make a little mixture. So here's my little mix. I first start with a little bit of Mod Podge and glue. This is Mod Podge. I'm not Mod Podge and glue. Mod Podge and water. Goodness. Little Mod Podge and water. This is burnt umber and black. This is my base coat. So this is like what I put on just about everything when I'm starting to do my painting. And so I've got Mod Podge, water, burnt umber, and black. And now I just throw some sticks in. I'm doing this little tiny thing because I didn't have a bigger thing. Then I will take this little mix. I had one of these. I'll just get them in there. Oh, one other thing. Sometimes when you are doing this, the material going into the paint won't want to flow into it, won't want to stick very well. So this is denatured alcohol. Put a little alcohol in it. Alcohol breaks surface tension. Everything will absorb that paint. It'll absorb that Mod Podge very nicely. And I just mix this up. This is just way too big. I don't want that thing. It's like an old crate, I think, is what it is. And then I just take this stuff and put it down in here. Whatever it is, I don't mind. Now I'm doing it in the crevices. I want the crevices to hold this, this stuff that I'm putting in. I want it to be like grabbed as the water is flowing out. That's what's going to hold on to is the crevice. Now, I haven't done really anything. I'm going to open this up. I haven't done really anything here. You notice I don't even have a lot of grit or anything here. And the reason is there's an altar that has to go here. That's what the mechanism does. It brings a thing over, an altar. And so I can't put much there. So that's why I haven't done that. I just wanted to show you. Now, after I've got that stuff in, and because of the brown paint and brown and black, once it's dry, it looks like this. So I've got this. Well, it's just like black basing your vehicle or something like that. Now I'm going to come in. I'm going to pull some of those items out with a little bit of color. So what I'm using is sand ivory. I just got a little bit of there in a lid here. And I take that sand ivory and I'm just going to come in here and I'm just grabbing one stick, just one tiny little piece. And that makes those details really jump out. When I do this and when I pick this out, I typically want to go with 3 colors. I'm only going to do 1 color because of the demo today. But can you see how much that jumps out? Just that, I mean, yeah, it's an awfully bright color in contrast, but it does more than that. It's not just the color. It gives depth. It gives you something to focus against, so you can see what's going on around it, not just that piece. Other things, because your eye is drawn to that real bright little detail, your eye then is drawn to that, and then you look at the stuff around it, right? So, like I said, I'm only doing 1 color on that now, just to show it to you, but I typically do 3 colors. And that's not the only place that I use the little 3 thing. And now we're going to look at placing a little bit of, well, no, I'm going to show you rock next. So I have, we're going to swap it over here again. I have a bunch of these little guys. These are like coffee lids. And I sort all of my gravel. This seems a little bright. I'm going to see is that a little bit better picture? I think it is. This is just some gravel out from our gravel in the drive. I sort this. So when I get it, these are in it too, but I have a strainer and a sifter. And so I like to separate them. So I have these available. These are like boulders. I haven't used any of these in it yet, but I have used quite a few of these. And when I'm placing them in here, they'll also get some paint. But what I wanted to show you is I take a little bit of scenic glue. I like to use Woodland scenic glue. That's what I use. I'm not sponsored by them or nothing, but I really like their stuff. And you could use Mod Podge, not diluted or anything like that. And by the way, I don't know if you do this. I keep, these are milk carton caps. I keep every lid, every cap. Mrs. Modelcraft is always, setting those aside for me and stuff like that in the kitchen. So those things are great. Now I'm going to just grab, now in this area, I'm just doing dark rocks. If you look, I've got, multiple colors in there, but I really wanted to concentrate on dark rocks. It doesn't mean they won't receive paint later, but I want to decide where the paint's going to go. Yeah, I could decide where the lighter color rock's going to go too, but I just want to do it later once everything's in. So I'm just grabbing darker rocks and placing them. Again, not out in the middle of somewhere. It's not a good place, because if people are walking up this, see these rudimentary steps that are formed here, it's not going to be right in the middle here. People will kick it to the side. So I'm trying to put them against these areas here. And that's what I was trying to say before. A grouping of 3 is a great way to start. I'm not saying that's all you do, but the eye is satisfied on something when there are 3 of them. I don't know how to say that better. I bet somebody else can explain it better if you've heard this before. But in art, in presentation, in design and stuff like that, 3 or groupings of 3 are preferred. Okay, so now after I've got there, you see I've got a little bit of glue around it. This is just a small paintbrush, and I've just got water on it. And I'm going to bring that water in, and I just want to bleed this stuff out. The great thing about this is it is flat and it's clear. And that's what I love about this, the Woodland Scenics. So you see, what I mean by bleeding it is I'm thinning it so that it settles down. Sometimes I'll take some off if I put some too much in there, but I want to get as much adhesion. So I don't really want to take the glue away, the PVA glue away. I really just want it so that it's not, on top of what I'm trying to show. I want it on the sides and the bottom, basically, of the rock. And then that's it. That little grouping is done. Another grouping that I try, and these are, specific things that I go after, because when I've seen them in the wild, or I've seen them in formation, stuff like that, it just kind of looks cool. But the other grouping I want to do is a string. And a string would be this. I've got that one right there. I want to see if you can see even. You can't see what I'm doing right there. So I've got one there, and it's a big one. Then I'll take another one next to it to get our 3. There's the 3. And then I'm going to have some that come away from one direction to make like this little string. And the reason I'm doing this is, does anybody remember the old Disney movie, Journey to the Center of the Earth, with like the old one? One of the things they saw was people were that went before them. Sorry, I'm in the way. Underground to the center of the earth, left little signs. They left little scratches in the rock, formations. They stacked rocks. Certainly in Canada, there is a lot of rock. I'm going to say it wrong, stacking, because I don't know the proper name for it. I know it's not a cairn, but that's a big part of what people do. So when I have a string of rocks like this, it's subliminally showing a direction. I need another one. It is pointing your eye in a specific direction. Because if you identify those rocks, if you see them, your eye, oops, I didn't want glue, I wanted water. If your eye identifies a string, it will go from one to the next, and then it will naturally continue. See? So that's just one of the things that I do. You see it in archaeology. You see it in rock formations. I love archaeology. I love that kind of thing. I also like geology. I love rock. And I'm trying to get something here to dab this away. Sorry. And so those are just things that I've picked up that I think are helpful. Okay. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to get that out of there. Okay. So that's a string. And the rest of it, you just you put the rocks in there that what looks right. If you wanted, like they do, and stack some stones, I think that would be wonderful. That would look really cool. I'm not going to do it here. Maybe I will, but I don't think so. But I do want to put a lot more in there. I also want to get some sand in there. I didn't dig it out. Sand is really important. But when I do my debris, I do them individually. Sand I might sprinkle, but I'm not doing sand and rocks at the same time. I do them individually. I think that when you're trying to look at this as closely as you are trying to put the stuff in, I think it makes a lot of sense to really do it carefully. When I started doing it, I thought I need some rock, and I just went in there, and I found myself, did it a couple times, found myself just removing things. Well, that one doesn't look right. And so instead of just dumping a bunch on there and removing stuff to make it look right, just put it in individually. So anyway, that's my story on that. I've got some comments. John is lighting it up. I want to say hello and talk about some things. Whelan's good. And I didn't know you were in Hungary. Go for it painting. That's really, really cool. Thanks very much. Did I? Yes, I got that one. So here's John. John says, underground place with stones, usually it's damp and wet. Yes, that's the other thing we're going to talk about, because that was Scott's idea last week or yesterday. And it's just brilliant. You could make different stones behind the frontal stone face, showing an older stone that existed previously. That's exactly correct. I have that. Thank you. Link says, I love learning about this, Bill. I can't thank you enough for sharing. Thanks, Link. I really appreciate that. It's really, really nice. John, have you used a coffee grinder? I have not. I have one. And that was the idea. But the one I had was already broken. It was our coffee grinder. And I brought it out here. I was going to use it, and it was broken. I was like, nah. So yeah, but a coffee grinder I think would work just as well. One of the things that I use this for, other than the wood, is I will also put paper towels in here and make wood pulp. And that's another one of the things that I use a lot of. I have a container. It'd be neat if I knew where the heck it is, but I have a container, and what it has is paper towels that have been blended up in that almost to a powder. And then I'll take that, put it into a container, and put water and Mod Podge, and then mix it up. And then it gives me this pretty watery but moldable, paper fiber that I can use and I use it all the time. I think it's over there on my cart, but I have shown it on different live streams. So that's the other thing I use it for. And whereas the coffee grinder wouldn't be big enough to do that, but I don't put any water in it. I never do anything with moisture, because if I did, it just, nah. So yeah, it's always for dry goods, and that thing works great. John also says, art says nature, nothing is equal. Odd numbers is more appealing to the eye. There you go. Yeah, 5. See, 5. It's kind of, that comes up too. And then John says, what's your rule of thumb when you need to use isopropyl alcohol when adhering things to your dioramas? Thanks, John. It just takes a very, very small amount, number one. Its purpose, remember its purpose. Its purpose is to break surface tension. That's it. So when I'm adding it to paint, it's because the thing that I want to paint seems to be like, if it's powdery, like if you're trying to do something on plaster, you've carved plaster and it's very powdery, and then you try to paint on it, it just, you're pulling plaster off on your paintbrush. So you put, if it's powdery kind of, if you put spray it with a little isopropyl alcohol, which will gas away pretty darn quick, but it allows it to break that surface tension and get adhesion. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. Remember what it's for. The other thing is soap. Soapy water. Soap breaks surface tension too, but soaps and detergents can do other things to your paints and stuff that may not be good. So when I'm doing this, isopropyl's fine. Soap would be fine. I could use soap and that would let things soak in. I think the alcohol maybe helps it wick in a little bit better than the soap. I think the soap, now I'm just out of my league at this point because I know nothing about these chemicals other than what I've done with them. So I don't want to go any further there, but yeah, it's breaking surface tension. It's allowing things to soak through that outer layer. That's a good rule of thumb. And again, it doesn't take a heck of a lot at all. I put way too much in that didn't really need. The other thing I like to do, though, is when I'm painting, I like to introduce other thinners that are not used for those paints. And I think I've talked about that before, where I'll use like an enamel thinner with acrylic paint. And it does great things. It makes the paint separate, but not like half and half. It's in this weird, cool look to it. So think about that when you're using your thinners and your chemicals and stuff like that. I mean, don't introduce something wacky, but by introducing those to different types of paint and stuff like that, you can get some amazing textures, some amazing looks from the paint. Oil can do amazing stuff to paint and separate it to get like an oil slick. So, there you go. What do I got next? I am going to show you. Oh, I want to show you the grit part of it. So I'm going to move this out of here because I have this piece that I'm going to show you what happens and how to prevent the sanded grout from like really messing up your paint job, because that's what it did to me. So I'm going to show you on the top down. So this was just cut off of this piece. I'm going to go back out a little bit here. So this is just a piece that I come off here. And what I want to show you is when I wanted to add some of this grit, because I didn't properly wash it, that's why I lost all my color. So there's no color under here, but you're going to see what I mean by this. Now, this is sanded grout. It's the same stuff you would use for tiling something in your home. I'm going to put this down just because I'm going to be wet on here. And what I've done is I have mixed it with, again, some Mod Podge and water. This is just Mod Podge and water, 50-50. And I mix those together. Then I'll take this guy, a pretty good sized brush, and see it's all mixed up in there. And I'll just brush it. I'm just brushing it on. Just like that. And just like tile, I mean, it's kind of crazy. It just does exactly what you would think. It just stays in the recesses just like the grout does when you wash it away. And that's what's really important is just the washing away. I didn't do that. When I first did this, I put it in certain places and hoped once it dried, I could take care of it then. But then I figured out, oh, well, I'll just do it the way it was meant to be done. And even here where I'm putting water over a seam, it does still flow past it. and take out the stuff on the face and leave. It's like this one here. See, there's some there. So those cracks do get it. So I know this is not like, oh, earth shattering, but it is one of those things that when you're doing this, you don't have to think about it now. This is just the way you can do it. And it'll be a lot easier for you, because I tried a couple of different ways and wasn't happy with it. I was trying to add glue to the seams and then just put this, and it was just terrible. It added too much is what it did, and I had to take it off. You don't want a bunch of stuff on here. You know, what this is supposed to be is just like dirt and grime from the ages just settling in a crack or a crevice or something like that on the face, just the variations of the stone. If there's too much on there, it'll look like something was applied. It just needs to be a little bit. Now, when this dries, I can then go back and enhance the face by painting it. There you go. So that's kind of where I would leave it. And it's just like you would do regular grout. So I don't think I'm showing you anything. I'm just showing you that it works just like regular grout, I guess. So there you go. And that's where I would leave that. I would let it dry. Once it's dry, then I come back in. This one hasn't been done to. But then I come back in, I just use white. Now, you see these white streaks on here. They're huge. There's just these massive streaks of white. Where's the paint? Here we go. But I'm going to show you this too. It's really easy, and you kind of get used to it real quick on how to work with it, and get it so it just flows properly into the cracks and doesn't overflow. So I'm just taking kind of a wide brush, and I'm going to see where you can see the best. Here we go. So this one's kind of not dark enough right there. So I'm just taking some paint, and I'm kind of blowing it all over the place. Look at that. Just sort of slopping it on, not being all that careful. Come back with a little water. I do want it to run on its own a little bit sometimes, so I'll do that. But then I come back with a much smaller brush right here, and I just clean the edges. It's just that simple. You know, I'm just blending. And I like to paint with acrylics wet. I don't want it to dry. Once it dries, you can't do really much to it. But here, when it's wet, I can do all kinds of great stuff to it. See that one? See that hard line underneath there? We don't want. I just come below it and bring a little water. If I find a crack that kind of naturally occurred, I draw a little bit of that white paint into it. I also make my own cracks, kind of just deviations in the surface like that. But just by coming back and hitting those hard edges where I just slop that stuff on, you can just blend it out real nice. So acrylics blend great as long as you do it when they're still wet, you know. Now, the other thing, if you're not used to the acrylic paint or something like that, this is not going to dry that dark. You know, it's going to lighten up a fair amount as it dries. So when that dries, you'll still see white. But then I can further come back like up here, and then I can come back and then do, you know, with a different color. I don't have any, but a different color and to take other variations on that. I am painting each of these individually. So that's the other thing that might, you know, isn't there a faster way to just swipe it on and get? No, I don't think so. I want a variation. I want different bricks. I want different colors. I want different stuff, you know, in there so that it doesn't look manufactured. Excuse me. One of the most amazing things about like some of the archaeological things that we see are the ones that look manufactured, but they're ancient, right? It's like 10,000 years old, Göbekli Tepe and stuff. And it's like, it looks like it was manufactured, you know, how they fit so perfectly. Like, how do they do that? We question maybe how they did it. If anybody ever read Chariots of the Gods in the 80s, that was just a fun book. So I want to have deviations. I want to have, that shouldn't have, you know, I want it to look like people are doing it and making mistakes. Because like I said in the last one, our last week in our live stream, it's more religious people that really believe that are doing this stuff than they brought in an engineer, you know. So there's a little difference in skill level there. They want to do it well, and they may have some people that have some skills, but it's a bunch of people building all this stuff, and they're just doing the best they can. So I do want some stuff that's messed up, basically. I've got some comments I would like to hear real quick. Okay, so we got John last time, and then John Hayes says, "Have you used vacuuming? I've seen more updated versions lately. He's building one, vacuum forming. I've not done vacuum forming. I think it would be really cool. You know, Micromark has that really nice vacuum former that is not that expensive, and I've got friends, and it's pretty small, but it works. You can also make your own vacuum forming. I've got a vacuum table. You know, I've got a downdraft. It's not a vacuum table because it actually has to, you know, but yeah, it's possible. It's possible, but I haven't done it. Shane is here. Hello, Shane. No problem at all. This thing does, you know, come back at 4. I repost it so at 4. And we did do a short preview of the video that's dropping tomorrow. So that's kind of cool. John says, curious about hardening things like stone. Horror prop making, they use something called dry lock now for small scale. Not sure if it will work. They use dry lock on tombstones. Looks great. Cool. Is it a paint or a coating or a texture? Dry lock. I don't know that. But, and can you put it directly on foam? Because that's the other thing. If you don't coat your foam, you put some stuff on it, it'll melt it. You know, it just eats it, which can actually make some really, really cool figures, you know, and designs in the foam. But yeah, it definitely attacks it. And he says, yes, you can. Very cool. Yeah, I'd like to check that out. Yeah, I'd like to check that out, John. I'll look for it. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Okay, so where are we at in this thing? Let me take a look. I'm going to go over here. It's not where I want to go. Let's go over here. Yeah, so picking out details, I think that's what got us on this point. Me showing you some demos. There's the bottom. We looked at that. There is the pit. Now, let's talk about the pit a little bit, because this pit is supposed to be emanating this mystical energy. I need that camera, not that camera. And so this mystical energy needs to move from, it's here somewhere. It needs to move from the pit to the forward portion of the cave. That's what this whole mechanism is about. And that is this. So I did make, and I'll show you some pictures. I did make this wooden, basically like a carriage or holder for the electrical coil. Now, for those who haven't maybe seen it, what this is this is an electrical coil that when it moves in proximity of a little LED, specially made LED with a coil and all kinds of stuff. There's a little PCB on it, tiny, tiny little things. They light up. So they just light up from the coil. So what I'm doing is the whole point of the front and the back of the cave here is the point that, hey, I didn't put my finger in that glue. Awesome. Is we want to move the mystical energy that is here to here. And so that mechanical movement, what it does is it has an arm that will swing over. And I've showed you that before. It's all taken apart now because it's all busted up because I'm weathering it. But by that arm coming over, that electrical coil will be over these little tiny lights, and then they can light up. And the point being that you gather these lights as you're playing the campaign. Throughout the campaign, you gather articles and items that have these little lights embedded in them. and then you bring them down to this boss fight area and that lights up. Now, I don't know where it goes from there, but that's where it is going. Okay, let's take a look, I think, at the last thing I'm going to show you, and that is this. So this is the sewer system. This is the front of the sewer system that goes on top of the temple. So the temple is below here. What I don't have is a way to get into the temple. And I don't really need one. It can be off camera. It can be out of the whatever. But I think it would be kind of fun to have one. So, and I kind of want them to come in from the front, you know, the front of the temple here. I want them to come in at the front. So this sits on here like so. I'm going to start working on this next week. And what I'm going to do is I'm thinking right back in here, there's going to be either a door or a hole, you know, just like a hole in the floor. I don't know, but there's going to be something there that leads them down there. Like they'd have to get in with ropes. That's one idea. The second idea is on the sewer level. There's also this big honking area right here that I've not done anything with. And I've been holding back on that. And I've talked about it before. I want it to be in an apothecary, which is an alchemist's laboratory, which I didn't know. I had to look that up. I didn't know what you would. Okay, let me back up. I knew what, you know, an alchemist was. But I'm like, what do you call an alchemist thing? Then I look up apothecary and I'm like, wait a minute. That's what, when you are in Europe, that's just what a drugstore is called, as an apothecary. So I just thought that was kind of neat. So that's where I was trying to say. So anyway, I'm going to build an apothecary. And in there may, and it's like, you know, dark magic kind of stuff. In there may be a passage down below into that, because that just kind of makes sense. The apothecary will be hard to get into. It'll have like a swinging wall thing from Young Frankenstein, of course, or Last Crusade. Indiana Jones used the same thing, you know, that swiveling wall. But I want that in there, and then as you swivel, you are in the little apothecary with all of the, you know, alchemist stuff, which I haven't figured out yet. But I think it'll be great fodder for just adding neat details like I do. So that is what is coming up next week. Okay. I think we got everything. Hold on. Let me see. John says, is that wood ring 2 pieces, rim and base? Yeah. And I'm not sure. I hope you can make it tonight, John, on our group build, but I'm going to talk to you about that, because the whole thing I've been waiting on is this little coil is a really neat piece of electronic. We talked about this last week too. This little coil is going to be on a mechanism that has to move. Number one, I don't want to lengthen these, but the way that I've constructed this thing, this is in the way. This little PCB right on here is in the way. So I've got to come up with some creative way to finish off this little loop thing. So there's a little wall there that I put on there, and maybe I can cap it. And then something, the same kind of thing all the way back on the arm. So I have to completely rebuild the arm, I think. But that's kind of where I'm at, trying to figure this out. John, I meant to say Monster Mud. It's a joint compound and latex paint. Oh, okay. Monster Mud. Cool. I'll look that up. I love it. Home Front Porch says, I have ideas for what the lighting and the wireless LEDs could lead to. How do I contact you? Just email me. That my email, Homefront Forge, is on the contacts, you know, on the page. It's bill@scalemodelcraft.com. Yeah, contact me. I'd love to talk about it. It's the issue is I mean rope, but I can't hide wires in this diorama. Well, I have to, but I haven't figured out exactly how to do it yet. The nice thing is the end of the wires go right into the wall, you know, the end of that arm goes right to the wall. So there's only a very, very small gap where I've got to hide those wires. I just haven't figured it out yet. So yeah, anything you can add, I think it would be great. Lengthening those wires would be something. But because I don't know enough about electronics, lengthening the coil, the actual coil wires themselves, I don't know if that would be a detriment to it. So I'm not looking to do that, but unless somebody knows what they're doing. But I also thought about just buying another one just so I could experiment with it. You know, they're not very expensive, which is really cool. And it comes with 10 lights. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do with it. 5, basically 2 colors of each 5 colors. So it's really cool. John, I think he means story-wise. Yes? Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. Perfect. Yeah, I'd love to. And the other thing is on my Patreon, if you're on Patreon, there is a free part to the Patreon. You can join there and message me through Patreon, but just Bill at Scale Modelcraft is great. You can just contact me there. Okay. Okay. And then Shane says, do you have an inner circle that can be joined? Yes, there most certainly is. What John and I do a lot is every Friday, there's a group build of our top tier folks in my Patreon. And by joining that, you could be on. And what we do, it's not like this exactly. I use StreamYard, but the cool thing is we're both on here, or however many is here. We can all be on and talking and interacting, and I can see you see all that kind of stuff. So the group builds are really, really fun. And then there's a different tier. So one time per month, because I'm sorry, let me bet each Friday, but on the 3rd week of the month, then I do a group build, and that's all paid patrons can come into that and be in that group build, and that's 3 hours. And then I haven't figured out exactly what it's going to be. It used to be on Friday, but I don't know we could really make it. You know, it's so late, people couldn't make it. So now I'm doing them on Sundays, and so the 3rd weekend of the month on Sunday, I think, is when we do it. It's like football's on, and I have football on certainly, but we can be online and building and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun. And I don't know that an awful lot, and I've said this before, I don't know that there's an awful lot of building physically going on during these group builds. But there's an awful lot of talk and discussion, and what about this, or how do I do that, and that's a lot of fun. And I can do demos and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, I would love for you to check it out, Shane. Thanks very much for asking. Scott says, could you hide the wires with seaweed? You, sir, are just freaking hitting them, because until you mentioned the tide thing, and then I decided this is going to be a grotto and barnacles, I hadn't thought of seaweed because that wouldn't work. Seaweed might work. It's higher than the. I need to show you this. Frankly, I've not done this, and I meant to. I've got a little laser, and so how I'm gonna figure out these barnacles and the tide lines is I just took it's like a construction laser. It's not like a high speed laser, but basically I adjusted this so I can take it and set it on the ground, and when I turn it on and like rotate it, it basically shows me, and it's the batteries line out, but it basically shows me where the tide line will be inside here. And so it's really kind of cool. Now, that being said, I want to keep it kind of low, because what I want to do is I want to build that tide line that shows barnacles and stuff like that, to include seaweed, and barnacles on, the bottom of this. So the bottom of this, there's going to be barnacles up to about that high. So this whole bottom of it will have barnacles and stuff. Up where the wires are, that is much higher, and I don't think the barnacles or the seaweed could kind of get up that high. That's the only negative of that. But I do love the idea of the seaweed. And I was thinking last night of how to make seaweed, obviously a plastic or something, but I don't know, because then painting it would be a nightmare. But the barnacles are another thing. I love using seeds or grains for miniature things. And I was thinking a barnacle, either a barnacle, well, a barnacle I would just do out of like a putty, but like a mussel I could do out of maybe like a barley, a piece of barley might, I don't know. But yeah, seeds are great for that. I was going to look that up and see what I could use, because I'm going to do barnacles. I'm going to do mussels. I'm going to do that tide line seaweed, the little bulb. I don't know how you do the little floaty bulb on the seaweed, but I think that'd be fun to figure out. So yeah, that is all coming. That's going to be in here. And that was all you, Scott. Thank you very, very much. I love it. I have to find your very first video. My very first video, I think my very first video was a flight that I took on a B-17 with my father-in-law and my nephew, and that was in 2020. My first video where I started uploading, they were all focused on wood, because when I first started doing videos in 2020, I thought I was going to do woodworking. Some woodworker, you know. I also build models and dioramas, but I'm woodworker. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do woodworking. Well, being as old as I am, I found out very quickly I couldn't maintain the schedule physically to do the woodworking that I wanted to do. I can do woodworking today. It's totally fine. I just couldn't do it on that schedule. You know, I did it for an entire year. From 2020 to 2021, I did my 52 videos every week, and they were mostly on, you know, woodworking. But man, it was just brutal, absolutely brutal. It just took a toll on me physically, and so then I shifted to dioramas, which is another huge passion, and miniatures, and that's much more sustainable. Much more sustainable. Woodworking, trying to get a video out every week, brutal, because you're building and filming, and yeah. But those were my first videos, and they're on there. I believe they are in a woodworking playlist, because I've done a lot of that. So thanks very much, Link. That's cool. John says, I'm working on a castle tower tonight when I'm online with Bill. Yeah, and his castle tower is really, really cool, because it's ceramic and wood and all. It's very, very cool. John says diffusing lights. Yeah, diffusing lights. I don't know what we were talking about when you hit that, John, but if you want to go a little bit further with it, that would be cool. Cool. So I think we're pretty close. I'm going to see if I've got any other pictures. That's not the right thing. Let's do that. Holy cow. I'm sorry, folks. Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. So that is what it looks like now. And I really like that view of it. I think it's just really cool, that low angle. The green in there is not going to stay green. That's the other thing. I'm going to be doing a little bit of, it's going to be green, yes, but there's going to be some variation. There's going to be some modeling, mottle, M-O-T-T-L-E, modeling on there, so that it looks not so consistent. Yeah, that's about it. This, John, is the ring that I made, and this is this is that ring. And how I made it is I did my little circular design, figured out what it was, and then I cut two courses, so it's two laminated courses, and I just didn't match up the seams, as you can tell from there. Once these dried, I was able to cut them out, and then put that little, it's about 1/8 of an inch piece of wood all the way around it. And that 1/8 of an inch piece of wood really, really helped, I think, in defining this thing. That's thick enough to have everything in it, and then I could cap it, which I just might do. That's part of the idea, because this is supposed to look like an ancient something or other that was built by religious folks to bring that energy from the back of the cave to the front. So, you know, I'm working on that. It's got to be a little bit more rougher hewn than it is. It's a little bit too exact at this point. So, weathering, more weathering. Hiding the wires. Yeah, fair point. I get you now. I see what you were saying, John. Hiding the wires, diffusing the light to hide the wires. Okay, here's something I thought about last night, which I really like. In the story from Raymond Feist and Mechemia, there's a hall, and this hallway, kind of like this temple, that's certainly part of the inspiration, had hanging tapestries. Tapestries might be the way to do it, because I love the idea of some drapery or some tapestry, with some ancient, cool looking design on it, because they were always kind of telling a story, those ancient tapestries and castles and the like. But that hanging there, torn and tattered right over that might do it, John. That might be able to hide those wires a little bit. So good one. I like it. But that's what I wanted to see. Very cool how you bend the wood. I can do that tonight. It was very, very simple. I'll show you tonight. Remember, we talked about that one roller thing last week or week before last week, and heated up. I used that, and I'll show you that tonight. It'll be a lot of fun because I use my torch and I heat it. Doesn't have to be that hot, but it rolls. What we're talking about is how I bend wood. And it's pretty simple if you've been woodworking, but if you haven't, there's questions. The basic process that I used with this was I cut these very, very thin strips of wood. It's not even this thick. It's thinner than this because it's mounted to that. But I cut some very, very thin strips of wood. And here's the trick. They're the length of a paper towel. Anybody know where I'm going with this? So then I take the wood and I wrap it in the paper towel, and I wet the paper towel and I stick it in the microwave. I wrap it around that paper towel kind of tight, the paper towel around the wood, and then wet it. And then I stick that in the microwave and I do it for like a minute. What happens is your microwave heats up the water in the paper towel that's surrounding the wood, steams the wood, and makes it pliable. I did it, and then I let it wait a little bit. You have to figure out, the kind of wood you're using. Some is going to split more readily than others, but that's a real easy way to bend wood. Very thin wood is you just got to steam it, and by wrapping it in a paper towel, throw it in the microwave. That's an easy way to steam it. That's how I did these. You can get a steamer. You can boil the wood. You can do all kinds of your wood, but what you're trying to do to get wood pliable is two things: introduce water and heat. And those things will help it bend without just splintering, because it will. And then once you've got that done, it has to dry. You can't bend it and then go, okay, there you go. And then just no, you have to put it like in a form. I used a cup lid. I'll show you tonight, John. But yeah, it's a really easy process. So there you go. Okay. Well, I think we're about there, folks. Thank you so much for coming by. I had a great time. I hope you had a good time. I hope that I did, get some information out there. It's really important to me to hear from you. I've got patrons. I keep missing, showing you my patrons, but I've got patrons and they're great people. Where in the heck is that flipping thing? I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. So it's over here. I got to go and do that. So these are my patrons, and they're just wonderful folks, because what they do is they pay me money to see my stuff, and then they give me wonderful ideas. The thing like Scott told me today, like John is always helping. You guys really, really make it a point of helping by giving me ideas. by filling in some of the blanks that I sometimes miss, so I really believe it is a really neat community where I'm receiving a lot from it. So thank you so much. And I hope I'm giving enough back. If there's anything that I know how to do and you want to know and you don't know, I will teach you, period. That's it. That's what I'm here for. I really like techniques. I really like how to learn to do new things. And so I'm constantly doing it. So if there's anything that you want to learn to do that you don't know how to do, or you just want to talk about it, because John, like John Hayes, he's just got all this knowledge and stuff. But I would love to have just to sit down with John and go, hey, what about this? How do you because I learned too. So anyway, that's a lot of what the community is. And that's through Patreon. But also here, if you comment and you want to reach me here, like Shane was asking about before, contact me. It's totally cool. This is my job. I do this every single day. It's not like a side gig. This is what I do. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So that's all I got. Thank you very much, folks. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great weekend. John and I are going to connect tonight, and we're going to be building. And then there's football this weekend. Woohoo! And I'm going to do some more painting and dive into that sewer. That'll be a lot of fun. So have a wonderful Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.